Hey everyone, welcome back to The Pod and the Pendulum, the horror movie podcast covering every horror movie franchise, one movie and one episode at a time. I'm your host, Mike Snoonian, joined once again by my co-host, Jerry Smith. Jerry, how are we this morning?
Doing quite well. It's extremely warm where I am, man.
It
But
is.
it's the worst. But yeah, Alien Covenant. I'm pretty stoked on this one because this movie. I mean, we all know based on the last episode how much you and I love Prometheus, and knowing that there was going to be another movie, I expected basically Prometheus 2, and we got nothing like that.
Right.
But that being said, like, I really enjoy this movie, this downer of a movie. It's so much fun.
You know, it's really funny because you posted, I think it was Monday night or Tuesday, are there any Covenant fans out there? And we expected it to be like asking if there are any Book of Shadows fans out there. Because, there are two kinds of people in the world. People who know that Book of Shadows is terrible and sociopaths. But we got so many responses of people coming out saying how much they really love Covenant. So
you know what my my favorite part of that same tweet, that question I did, is that there were people that would speak up about how much they like Covenant, and it made me so happy to see so many. But then I remember Connor Sweeney from Astron 6, he just commented, no.
All right.
Those are the best.
The one-word ones are sometimes great. So we have two great guests with us tonight. Returning, she is back with us. I think the last time she was on was when we recorded the Blair Witch. We have Sarah Stubbs from Geeks Who Eat. Sarah, how are we doing?
Well, now that I've been called a sociopath, I feel a little offended.
Oh dear.
I'm over here just in shock right now that I'm a sociopath for loving Blair Witch 2.
Well, it really wouldn't be us if we didn't insult our guest right off the bat, basically.
This is true. I mean, you're just setting the bar.
Mm-hmm.
So
see, you have it easy. You're not offended on the Adam Marcus level.
Oh, I don't know. He's a good friend of mine. So
No. I'm not saying that. I had some things to say about Jason Goes to Hell, and I guess he heard it, and his wife was really upset.
Deborah's so nice, though. I love her. And for the record, Jason Goes to Hell is my favorite
awesome.
Friday the 13th movie. So
it's made my top 4. I won't go bananas. It's in my top 4.
It's number 1 for me, honestly.
Adam was one of the more fun and gracious interviews I've ever had the pleasure of conducting as well, so he gets high marks. But before we completely devolve into fisticuffs here at this point, before we start saying some things that we simply cannot come back from, Jerry, why don't you introduce our second guest?
I'm so excited because I've wanted this guest to be on the show for a while. Josh Stifter, the director of The Good Exorcist, Scumbag, Greywood's Plot. He's done work for great animation work and other stuff for Robert Rodriguez, various other people. Extremely talented filmmaker. We're so excited to have him on. What's up, Josh?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Quite good.
Quite good. So we'll start with you, Josh. We always like to know from our guests what it was about this particular entry that got them excited to kind of come on board and talk about it. So in general, what was it about Alien Covenant that said, I definitely want to spend a couple hours on a Sunday waxing rhapsodic about it?
Oh, I mean, Covenant is one of the weirdest movies. My relationship with this movie is crazy because I went and saw it in the theater by myself, which I went through this phase where I love to go to the theater by myself and watch a movie.
It's the best.
Oh, like a Sunday morning movie where it's not super packed and you could just shut down and purely enjoy the movie. I love that. But I watched Covenant, and the first time I walked out just I felt nasty after watching. I didn't like it. I didn't quite know what I had watched. It was not what I expected at all. And then I would lay in bed and I would just think about the act structure. I would think about the scenes. I would think about the way it was advertised and then what they ended up putting out. And I fell in love with the movie retrospectively after my first viewing. And since then I've seen this movie literally 50 times. I put it on in the background while I work. It's beautiful background bleakness for me.
Wonderful. Excellent. Sarah, how about yourself?
I have a little bit of a different experience with it. I loved it immediately. Like, I was not a fan of Prometheus, so I went into it being like, okay, they better fix this, because I am already so put off by what they did with Prometheus. And then when I saw it, I walked out of the theater and I was like, that was freaking awesome. Like, I was just immediately obsessed. And I will say that there is a little tiny baby xenomorph in there that is the cutest thing on earth. And I was like, I'd almost let one of those come home with me because it's so damn cute. Like, I'd be hard pressed not to be like, hey, you're adorable, come on home.
I would let one of those come home. I mean, that would get rid of at least a couple kids of mine.
I mean, maybe you can train it. Like, maybe
Right?
it will.
Yeah,
I mean,
you have to blow
Lift my
into its
arms up.
nose. You have to blow into its nose like a horse. Isn't that the line in the movie? He says like,
Yep.
blow into the horse's nose and it'll whatever.
Which I
That's what
guess
you
is a
gotta do.
real thing. Which I guess, like, listening to Scott's commentary, he said he said he was a jockey at one point growing up. He was a very, I guess, apparently a tiny little boy growing up. And he said that's one of the things he heard, that if you blow in a horse's nostrils, it will be more receptive to you.
Man.
I still don't think I'm going to try that.
Please, yeah. Well,
I'm not going to. That's not something I'm ever going to try.
probably
Like,
not.
that's not a good idea.
No, there's so many ways it could go. So really quick, we'll just kind of discuss a little bit of the background of Covenant. And it sounds like, Sarah, like you were one of those fans that basically had Ridley Scott kind of changing course from how he originally envisioned what would have been Prometheus 2 going.
For me, what it really was when I saw Prometheus, I wanted to see an Alien prequel. And I did not feel like, I felt like they shoehorned an Alien prequel into the last, 20 minutes of it.
That's true, they did.
And I felt like if they had called it any other movie, it could have probably been enjoyable. But when you tie it to a franchise that I already liked, and then felt like you just kind of half-assed it at the end, I was just angry. It's how I felt about that new Cloverfield movie, the Cloverfield Paradox, where it could have been an entertaining movie if you had called it anything but Cloverfield.
I think with those movies, the interesting thing is, like, even Cloverfield Lane and especially Paradox, that those were both not Cloverfield movies initially. Like, they took pre-existing scripts and, like, quite literally added a Cloverfield connection after they were done, just to kind of stamp that on, you know what I mean? Like the second and the third Cloverfield films weren't even supposed to be Cloverfield films, right? So it feels so forced, you know?
Prometheus felt that way to me, though. Like, I felt like I watched something that was not at all an Alien movie. And then they were like, oh, we need to add a little xenomorph looking thing at the end so people realize that it is.
See, I got exactly what I wanted out of Prometheus, because I had always heard it pitched as like a sideways movie to Alien, that it's going to go back and answer questions more about the space jockey and take place in that universe, but not necessarily be about the xenomorph. And I see you have a quote here, Jerry. Do you want to read off that quote?
Yeah, the thing with Covenant, even just pre-production, is that Ridley Scott had no interest basically making another Alien film. And I think that was shown with Prometheus. He was more interested in the philosophies and different statements and that kind of stuff. And the backlash that he received from that completely, not even subtly, but completely changed the course of what Prometheus 2 would have been. Initially, he had zero desire after Prometheus to make another Alien kind of film. I think the biggest issue for a lot of people when it comes to Covenant is the fact that it is 100% kind of fan service, course correction. I mean, even before, there were 15 drafts of Covenant, and early on, Ridley Scott basically said, this is a quote from him, when talking about the xenomorph and basically the Alien kind of movies. He said, "The beast is done, cooked. I got lucky meeting Giger all those years ago, and it's very hard to repeat that. I just happened to be the one who forced it through because they said it's obscene. They didn't want to do it, and I said, I want to do it. It's fantastic. But after 4 films, I think it wears out a little bit. So there's only so much snarling you can do. I think you've got to come back with something more interesting. I think we found the next step. I thought Engineers were quite a good start. That's what Ridley Scott wanted to do with what ended up being Covenant. But there was such a backlash of fans wanting a return to the Alien film that the people that liked Prometheus, and even Ridley Scott himself, kind of abandoned a lot of what they set up with Prometheus just to try to course correct. And it feels that way. And I say that as a fan of Covenant. I'm quite fond of this movie. But in a lot of ways, it feels like Prometheus kind of set up these big themes and ideas and questions, and it's just dropped them on the ground with Covenant because a lot of people didn't want to take the time to, think about those and kind of do that. And Prometheus, it was never a prequel to Alien. I mean, and this sounds cheesy as hell to say, but even Ridley Scott said it's a prequel to Alien. It's kind of like setting something up that will, with another movie, which is kind of arrogant to do, expect people to like be on board for 2 or 3 movies. But he wanted to set up these ideas with Prometheus and explore them to where they would eventually lead into, the Nostromo and all those events. And I think what Covenant does get right, I think kind of sets that up for another movie that would definitely connect to Alien.
Right.
No, I think really what a lot of it boils down to for me is it personally. I am not like a huge sci-fi fan. I like Alien because of its horror kind of, undertones, and I like Alien Resurrection because it's got a little bit more of that horror element, and that's why I really liked Covenant because they returned to that. I'm not a fan of Aliens because it's just like a, sci-fi action romp at that point. I feel like Alien 3 is also pretty sci-fi driven, and same with Prometheus. Like, I don't like Blade Runner. I don't like any of that kind of stuff. It's not my jam. My husband loves it. Like anything, sci-fi that isn't like horror-based sci-fi, he's all about. And he likes the horror stuff too. But I just am not a huge sci-fi fan, so I think that's also why Prometheus was just like kind of like, I was like, I want more horror. Give me some, give me what I want.
And I think the end of Prometheus sets up, and Lindelof has said, you have 2 diverging stories at the end of Lindelof. You have one that can lead directly to Alien, to your point, where you get that pure horror movie, that haunted house in space that Alien is sometimes called. And then you have this other movie that the original idea was to pursue with Shaw and David exploring the questions that are kind of raised. So you have the end of a movie that can take you in 2 different directions overall. And I still think this could have worked, except for one, if you don't keep 2 things from Prometheus's original script. I think what really kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit is that the location on Prometheus is no longer LV-426, the moon that the Nostromo discovers. It's the LV-223, and to me it muddies everything up, because now you have another space jockey as opposed to the one that the Nostromo crew finds. If you had just left it so that the ship you see in Prometheus is the one that is the one in Alien, and it's the same space jockey, and you have not only the cylinders but also eggs. At that point, I'm like, I don't need anything else in terms of like, let's answer these questions about it. I'm still left with this, like, going into Covenant 2, I'm still wondering, well, how did the space jockey end up in LV-426? And it seems like that's no longer anything that anyone's interested in kind of exploring.
Which is funny because, I mean, if you watch the making of Prometheus, that wonderful documentary that De La Zirica did, like, that was the whole, like, foundation of even doing Prometheus, Like, they went into Prometheus just on the idea of who is the space jockey and where did he come from? And, like, that was what Prometheus was created to explore. So later on, like, and I love Ridley Scott so much. And, Blade Runner is probably in my top 5 movies of all time. But that being said, the guy is notorious for, like, stating stuff and having these ideas and these goals and saying what he's going to do, and then as the film progresses, completely changing what he's saying about what the film is, what he wants to do. And it shows with how many director's cuts and various versions of every single movie he does comes out. Like, at some point, you have to stick to what you said this movie is.
Right.
Like, because going back and looking at that quote, he had zero interest in doing Xenomorphs. And what did Covenant end up being? Like, basically, like a montage of great monster moments, which I love. I mean, God, this is like, I was telling my wife this, like, I think this is the goriest Alien film out of all of them.
Yeah.
It's definitely the nastiest. Like, the gore is nasty.
Yeah, I mean, like, I never want to have sex in the shower again after watching Covenant. Like, I'm scared.
Dude, the scene of the dude puking up the alien in the field is one of the, like, gnarliest. The sound design is disgusting. There's just something absolutely disgusting about all of those moments of this movie. And it really, like, I think the point that this is, like, more horror that Sarah made, that it's like, this is like a horror movie. That's what the second act of this movie is what I love. The first act, it's almost like an hour. Like, that first act is so long and tedious to get through. But then once you get to David, the movie just becomes like a love letter to horror to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think one of the other elements that works so well with Covenant, I think that Ridley Scott really noticed how much the people who did like Prometheus just loved Fassbender.
Yes.
Because in Covenant, I mean, even though I love Covenant and I think it's so entertaining, Michael Fassbender is the only actor in the entire movie that I think of.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like they tried to make Watterson's character basically be the new Ripley, and she does a great job, but I forget even the name of the character.
I just kept referring to her as like Juno stunt double. That's pretty much like all I could think of.
No, but like Fassbender, I mean, he plays two roles in this film, and he plays them so differently. Like, it's such a testament to like his acting. And like David, oh God, I love David in this movie so much. Like in Prometheus, he was kind of he had this somewhat of resentment towards humans and like his makers, but this movie, he hates everybody. Like, he's that toddler. He's that toddler that hates his parents, hates his playmates. Like, David is just on a mission to destroy and basically say, you know what? My father, Wayland, created me. He was flawed. He was just a pathetic human. I'm going to create my own species. I'm God now, and all of you are going to fucking die. Like, it's so fun.
And he sells it with just like facial reactions. There's the scene where he's cutting his hair, looking in the mirror, and the whole time I watch it, I just go like, this dude hates everyone, and he's saying nothing. He's just looking at himself, but you can see in his eyes that he's just evil. And he's gone insane. He's an AI who's gone insane and has become, Dr. Frankenstein or Dr. Moreau. Like, he's ready to just destroy it all and do his own thing.
That, and like anyone who like just talks shit on this movie, they don't realize that what other film in the Alien franchise do you get to see Michael Fassbender basically like just finger a flute for like a whole scene? Like, that is weird cinema right there.
It is. Like, it is so bold and odd.
It's so like erotic between Fassbender and Fassbender. Like, it's such an interesting scene, and this whole movie is.
It was a really uncomfortable scene to watch, like, during a screening, because everybody's like, they don't know if they should laugh. They don't know if they should be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it was just really weird.
I felt like that through the whole first screening. I think that's why when I walked out, I was in the theater with like a handful of people on a Sunday morning. We all just kind of walked out like, well, that was weird. What do we say about this?
In some ways, it speaks a little bit to the disjointedness of the movie, because you have the first act where you're like introducing your typical like science fiction crew. Then you have the last act, which is a full-on like alien movie with the xenomorph and stalking and, great kills and effects. And in the middle, the movie like completely slows down, and you have what I think is what Scott was most interested in exploring.
Right.
Overall. And he's like, we're going to pause and we're going to, this is what we're going to talk about now, and then we'll get back to like, all right, you've sat through that bit, and now you can have like your alien bits. And I find that, to your point, Josh, like that middle section to me is the best part of this movie.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I love all of the stuff with, David interacting with Walter, right? That's his name?
Mm-hmm.
With David interacting with Walter, all of the stuff of him talking to other people, him explaining love, like an AI explaining what love means is one of the weirdest things that I never expected to see in an alien movie ever.
That ends like, oh man, one of the things I've been just most excited about discussing on this episode is what happened to Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have my own like specific opinions about David and Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easy for a lot of us, most of us, I think, even especially if you're fans of Prometheus, to see what happens in Covenant and just see Shaw kind of displayed there. And you feel like a gut punch. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not the beginning of Friday the 13th 2 where Alice gets killed immediately or stuff like that. No, like Shaw's basically dissected.
I love that though. That disgusting, like, oh my God, that's what happened.
Oh no, totally. And I've said this the last 2 episodes, which people are just going to be like thinking I'm just trying to plug the book. But they have that really great 2-book set of David's drawings from Covenant, and it goes into detail even more about what he did to Shaw. And like I feel like because we're so kind of taken back and kind of caught off guard by that we get kind of upset. But I think that David, he did it because he loved her. And, if David didn't love Shaw, he wouldn't have made that little like grave for her, And the thing is, the way she's displayed, it's almost like an altar of sorts. And I mean, what was Shaw's biggest heartbreak in Prometheus? It was the fact that she couldn't have kids. She couldn't give birth. So what did David give her that nobody else could? Basically being the mother of an entire species. It's because of what he did that he tested all these different things on her body. Like, it's the ultimate gift. I mean, obviously he doesn't know that maybe murdering her wasn't the best way to go about it. But that being said, I feel like David did kind of learn what love is, because I feel like he always loved Shaw, and that's why he talks about Walter. And see, I can't even think of Watterson's character.
About I don't know Walter, either.
Walter feels about her. Yeah,
Daniels.
I feel like David did that to Shaw as a way to basically make her the mother of the entire species.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a tribute, and I think it's great. Just don't kill people.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. I feel like, and I mentioned it briefly in Prometheus, but given his affection for her and his like really grim view of humanity, which is on full display here, and also watching some of the prologue and marketing materials, like the little short movies they did to promote Covenant, this feeling of being betrayed by someone he loves, because Shaw was not on board with David's goal of kind of using the spores and the black goo to wipe out these engineers and create his own race. So all of those things, I think, kind of factored in.
I think the way that they did it was like really like good, because like you go into a movie and you kind of expect to see, the heroine from the previous film or the final girl come back for at least part of it, but she never does. Like, and so something is kind of off about this. Like, It's just a recording of her. Like, and I think, honestly, he did it out of betrayal, because like he did what he did because she betrayed him. Like and that probably he felt that not just because she was, she didn't want to like go with his plan, but also because he, himself trusted a human. Like, he allowed himself to feel affection towards this human, and then she betrayed him. So I think it was like not just, oh, I don't want to do it. There was some self-loathing in that as well. Like, he's angry at himself because he allowed himself to like trust her and be affectionate towards her, and then she didn't agree with him.
That's a really fair point, that the fact that like he has a sense of disappointment in himself for allowing himself to get close to a person.
Do you think that's where his absolute hatred for everyone stems from?
So let's backtrack a bit. Can we move all the way back to the prologue of the introductory scene of the movie? Because I think you see the seeds of what David's going to come to feel for humanity are there right from the moment he wakes up. And his realization of what makes him different from his father, Wayland. He says to his father, "You will die, I will not." And that becomes the main issue with David and basically all of mankind. When we think about what all of our fears are, what really relies at the heart of all of our anxieties, it's this idea that one day we're going to die. And there's no way to stop about that. And also we don't know what comes next. David doesn't have that problem. David can see himself as like a godlike creature at this point, yet he's being told that he has to serve his master. And there's that inner conflict in him, like, I'm being created to serve these people, yet I am somehow their better.
I refuse to believe that mankind is a random byproduct of molecular circumstance. No more than the result of mere biological chance? No. There must be more. And you and I, son, we will find it.
Allow me then a moment to consider. You seek your creator. I am looking at mine. I will serve you, yet you are human. You will die. I will not.
Bring me this tea, David. Bring me the tea.
Oh, I agree 100%. And that scene, I think, is so important. I mean, when I first watched Prometheus, I was kind of annoyed the fact that they cast Guy Pearce as Wayland. As much as I love Guy Pearce, like, he's one of my favorite actors. But it's just like, why cast Guy Pearce and just give him really, really bad old age makeup? You know, why not just cast an older actor? But I think the fact that they go back in time and show that younger version of Wayland, you know, and I think Guy Pearce is great in that scene, and it really shows not like the confusion in David at first, because it's just like, well, if you're supposed to be my god, then why am I more powerful than you? Like, why are you so like passing? You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna die, I'm gonna be around forever, and I'm supposed to cater to you. And like you said this in the last episode, and I definitely agree with you after rewatching it. Like, there's almost like an anger in Wayland when, you know, David questions him, and like you said last episode, he basically just tells him to make him a tea,
right?
Even though it's right next to him.
And it's very much a power play. It's very much this is what separates us. You will do as I say. And what I caught on rewatching Covenant last night for this show is the look that David has in that moment when he's asked to give tea. He looks hurt and he looks confused.
It's so good.
I've never caught that before. But you see Wayland's own discomfort when he's asked this question, like, well, where do you come from? And I think that it's something that all of us experience as parents, or anyone that spends any time around children, that when you're asked these questions that you don't know the answers to, it becomes really easy to feel uncomfortable and maybe even get a little bit defensive, because you feel like your authority is being questioned.
Oh, totally. And like a funny story having to do with that, the day after I revisited Covenant this week, like, my son was just being an absolute brat, and he just would not listen to me, and my wife and I were in the living room, and I was like, yeah, go get me a Dr. Pepper. and he did. And I was like half joking because I was thinking of Covenant in that scene, and I looked over and my wife was looking at me like, motherfucker. Like,
You just wiling his ass.
I'm gonna turn that into like a verb. No, but like in all seriousness, like we do have that. Like, and I remember experiencing that when I was a child. It's like you have all these questions and you question your parents about not just the meaning of life, but like their place in it and your place in it. And especially if like you have a father like mine who just had zero interest in any of those talks whatsoever. Like if I asked him about the Steelers, you know, he would tell me like every player on the roster, but like these important life questions, you know, it is easy to kind of get offended. It is kind of easy to get defensive when, you know, your child's asking you these very important questions. And I can only imagine being a creator of like a synthetic human, and you can already see those seeds of that person questioning what you mean to them. Like it's kind of like the Christian story of, you know, Lucifer kind of standing up to, you know, God and being cast out, that kind of thing. I feel like Wayland kind of does that with the T. And like I just want to illustrate one more time that T was right next to Wayland.
It's literally.
I love that. I love that. And it took me a few viewings to catch that, and then I saw it once, and I'm like, wow, that is the most like condescending, shitty thing to do.
Well, I mean, Wayland, but even prior to that, Wayland sets the tone that he feels he's superior because, you know, he says to David, play something for me. He won't tell David what he wants to hear. He says, you know, you choose. And then when David chooses, he insults it.
It's anemic.
So, like,
it's beautiful. It's such a gap.
Like, so
he
he's
is my
already,
dad.
He's already just being an asshole. And like, David's like, already like, I'm better than you. I know I'm, you know, more advanced than you. And you're gonna insult my music? Like, you're
Right.
already like,
I feel
when
like
he told him to pick it, it wasn't like, you know, he picked something and then he just didn't like how David played it. He was like, you pick. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
Like,
oh god,
already have
man.
him with be acting as a withholding parent. It would be like when, you know, if you know, considering David's age, like when my daughter was born, if I like held her just out of the womb and said, I wish your hair was a different color, like immediately withholding right away.
Immediately.
I also feel like Guy Pearce doesn't get enough credit because that dude is one of the best actors at playing just a smarmy piece of shit.
Right.
Like, and he's so good. And even when he's a good guy, he's an asshole. Like, LA Confidential is one of my favorite movies of all time. And Guy Pearce is Ed Exley. Like, he's the hero of the movie, but you can't stand him for 90% of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, he's so, and like Lawless. Like, so many good movies. I mean, he's just so good at being a bastard. And the couple scenes that he's in, you know, like combined with Prometheus and Covenant and that really great TED Talk short film before Prometheus, which I think we should talk about the short films of Covenant too, because especially The Last Supper, that short, for any listeners that don't know, it happened with Prometheus too, but with Covenant, they released about, I think, 5 or 6 of these little short films leading up to the events of Covenant. There's kind of like throwaway ones, but there's like 2 of them that actually just extend not just the mythology, but the story. And one of them's The Last Supper, and it's the whole crew of the Covenant basically having dinner, getting ready for, you know, cryo sleep or whatever, you know, they call it.
So what about that speech, Daniels?
Oh, I have prepared.
Sorry, yeah, Jake asked me to say something if it's okay.
Please.
You've all sacrificed so much to be here. To be a part of this. It's the first ever large-scale colonization mission to go this far into our galaxy. You're making history. And everyone back on Earth is really grateful for your hard work and your courage. I just want to say I couldn't pick a better bunch of jerks to get marooned on a distant planet with. So, to the Covenant!
To the Covenant!
And the captain, I'm going to laugh about this a lot because I just think it's one of the most genius things about this movie. If you're watching the theatrical and you haven't seen the short films, out of nowhere, there's an accident, and James Franco's corpse is there. And you see it, like, him mountain climbing in, like, a cell phone or a tablet video that Watterson's character sees. But the fact that, like, I remember I hadn't seen the short films before I saw the movie in the theater, and I remember thinking, like, is that James Franco? And why is his body just there? Like, what purpose did he just, like, beg to be on the set? But that short film, I mean, it goes into, like, the relationships with everyone, and especially the relationship with Billy Crudup's character. And I feel like I'm going to say that with every actor in this movie, such and such's character, because I don't remember a single one of their names.
Oram.
Okay, yeah, Oram. You know, there's tension between Oram and Watterson's character because Oram wanted to be the captain, and he feels like he didn't get the captain because he's a Christian. You know, he feels like he's been, you know, looked down on because of his faith, when in reality, he's pretty wild with it.
Yeah, faith is a red herring here. His faith doesn't really play into any part of his decision-making at all or what's going on.
Did you watch the Phobos?
I have not.
Special feature. His behavior in terms of his religion is explained through that a lot.
He plays the victim so hard with it, you know?
So what does that explain, or what does that add to it?
The Phobos is like, it's everyone getting tested before they get selected to be on Covenant. And so they're talking about fear, and he's doing his whole, I don't believe in this and I don't believe in that because of this. So I feel like they build out his character a lot more to where, because I watched it before I watched Covenant again this morning, and his character made a lot more sense.
Okay, because there's nothing in this movie where he makes a decision based on religion that ends up costing the crew. Even the fact that they go down to this planet and decide to investigate it, it makes a lot of sense. Like, given the information they have, that it looks like it's habitable. And he's not saying, nope, we're completely going to, like, scrap our original plan. He's just saying, based on the evidence, let's go investigate it. And he does that in part because he knows that no one in the crew wants to get back into those Cairo sleep, the chambers for sleeping at that point, that they're all scared to get back in after the accident. So in some ways, he's looking to earn some points. But what really does him in is, number one, his crippling insecurities and how he's unable to, like, really build any rapport. There's even the moment when he's talking to his wife right after he realizes he's the new captain, and he's like, you think I can do this, right? And she doesn't answer.
Yeah.
She gives him a pep talk.
She knows.
But she doesn't answer. And I think she actually gives a little nod no after she gives him, like, a little kind of dust up to make sure he looks presentable. When he's not in her line of sight anymore, she actually shakes her head no. Like, she even knows he's not really up for the job.
That's very much an underlying theme in these movies, though, is that nobody listens to women.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, going back to the first film, like, most of the series would not happen if they had listened to Ripley at the beginning of Alien.
Every single Alien franchise movie, if they had listened to the woman or a woman who's in the movie, because Prometheus, you have what's her name?
Shaw.
But no, the other one, the bad gal.
Vickers, yeah.
So, a woman.
Yeah,
if they listen to a woman.
Yeah, in Prometheus, they do listen to Shaw, and then it sets off all of the movies.
But they don't listen to her at the end so much when
That's true.
she's like, we can't do this, get away. And Vickers is like, no, we have to continue. We have to do this. So
I don't think anybody listens at all in the Alien series.
That's true.
And, like, I think the thing with Oram that just bothers me so much is that, and this is why none of the crew takes him seriously at all. It's because what Oram really is he's that person that tries to make everything about his faith, good and bad. Like he's the kind of person that would, like, yell at someone at Trader Joe's for asking to wear a mask and, like, oh, you're just making me do that because I'm a Christian. No, it has nothing to do with this, actually. Like, every single issue that Orm has in Covenant, it leads back to that. Oh, they didn't let me do that because I'm a Christian. You know, oh no, this is happening because I'm a Christian. No, you're just a dick, dude.
Right, and at one point he says that, and they cut to a reaction where someone almost like does an eye roll, where they really are hitting that on the head, because that always struck me that he is always pushing the fact that it's his faith that's causing the problem, even though he doesn't ever show it.
Not at all, right? And like, if you watch The Last Supper, like, there's a reason James Franco is the captain. Like, he's chill as fuck with his like blanket over his shoulder. You know, that's a captain you want to like get on board with. He listens. You could tell there's a good relationship between him and the other people, and it feels like a tight-knit family. Orm's the only one that doesn't fit in. And even when Waterston's character, she starts doing the speech after Franco, you know, goes to sleep, Orm tries to act like that Franco didn't tell him not to do the speech. You know, like he tries to interrupt her saying, oh, I can do it. And then she basically said, no, I was told to do the speech. Right. You know, like he's just, and what's cool about that, really briefly, is one of my favorite parts of Prometheus, and we discussed in the last episode, is when David looks at Logan Marshall Green's character during that whole like pool table scene, and like, and Marshall Green, like Logan Marshall Green, he kind of like jabs at David, and you could see that look on David, like, you know, like,
you get the feeling that even Walter doesn't respect Orm here. There's that point where like Orm gives him like a directive or asks him a question, and Walter, it's almost snarky in tone, where he's like, "Was that a question?"
Is that a question? I love that scene. That's one of my favorites, because he's like, "Are you actually asking that?"
Like, well, it's because moments before he had literally just talked down to him and was like, "Oh, well, you and Mother need to go get your systems checked to make sure that you guys don't fuck it up again." And he's like, "Oh, wait, so I fucked it up, but now you're asking me a question?" Right. F you, like.
But what? I love that. It's cool to see like that same dynamic from Prometheus and Covenant, but like amplified with David and Orm. Like, it's not a subtle thing when David gets that face hugger on Orm. You know, it's not subtle. Like, David is getting off on knowing that this guy's about to get it's so sinister, and I love that. I love that.
Because he just shot his baby. Yeah. He like literally just shot like the creature that trusted him, and so now, who David already thinks is superior.
Right.
So now this inferior thing just killed his superior like baby. I'd probably like put him in front of a face hugger too.
I would do it in general, man. Fuck.
But the way he says, the way David says, "Let me show you," or whatever. He has like a line where he's like so happy that he asked. He's like, I cannot wait.
He keeps
all that's
nudging
missing
him.
Is a little mustache to twirl. It's really
he keeps nudging him. Like, he's kind of reluctant to look, and he's like, "No, it's okay. It's
he does. He says, "No, take a look."
Does anyone here remember the cartoon The Far Side?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So definitely. One of my all-time favorite ones is there's like a dog hiding behind a dryer, and the door is open, and there's like a sign pointing in that says "cat fud," and like the cat is peering into the dryer, and the dog's caption is like, "Oh please, oh please, oh please." And it's just like, it reminds me of that so much. Like, it's perfectly encapsulates that. Let's talk briefly about not so much the crew of this ship, because there's really not a lot to them. Like, there's not a lot of anything to really any of the human characters in this movie. But I think that the fact that they are all paired off is interesting, and that their mission is to terraform and find a new colony, a new place to live, and they're in charge of over 2,100 souls at that point to basically restart.
Talk about pressure.
No pressure at all. But I think that the fact that this is the first Alien movie that doesn't really see a corporation trying to capture and weaponize the xenomorphs is a really fun idea, or nice idea that's not really played with enough. In the first 4 movies, the company's always trying to get a handle on the xenomorphs and weaponize them. Ripley and anyone in her orbit are deemed expendable. In Prometheus, Weyland doesn't really give a shit about Holloway and Shaw. he doesn't care about their discovery in terms of what it means for mankind. He's just like, I can go to them and they can save me from death. He doesn't care about anyone else. It's all about how this will benefit him.
Right.
Covenant's, their crew, their job is to extend life. And I think having all of them coupled off is a reminder of that. And it's not just about procreation, because there are same-sex couples that are included on the ship, but the idea that, like, we're a community and we're not just a mass of individuals. And by the way, what a idea for right now. Like when you were talking about people not wearing masks, and Sarah, you were talking before the show about how hard Arizona is hit with COVID and people still not doing what they need to do to kind of slow this down. The goal of this crew, it's the first one where the goal is to really save people and not weaponize something.
Right. And I like that when they first show up on the planet, the excitement that they have, even the people who are skeptical are like, oh my God, this could be it. And I don't tend to pay that much attention during the first act of the movie because I like the second act so much more. But knowing we were going to talk about it, I'm like, okay, actually focus on that first act because I know we're going to talk about it. And I actually really liked that little beat where they get there and, you know, the ye of little faith moment and whatever. But there's even there's smiles on everyone. Like, this is potentially it. I like that joy of the community and finding something where they could put a little cabin.
Well, and that's like, you know, you're going back slightly to Orem, you know, he seems to not care about community. And that's maybe the problem and why he comes off as kind of not the villain, but villainous in this movie is because, you know, even his wife says, remember, after this, they aren't your crew, they're going to be your neighbors.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's thinking like as that crew, and he won't let them even have like a memorial for the loss of their captain and the, you know, colonists. And then he gets mad that they do it anyway. And his wife is like, dude, she's burying her, like she's basically burying her husband, let it go. And so I think that that's like, it's a really good point to like show like the people outside of Orem, they have that community mindset, and he just doesn't. I'm the captain, I have to lead, and I have to, whether it's, you know, good for the whole or not, I'm going to lead.
Right.
It's also interesting that, like, their whole goal is basically to find this new way of life in this community, and so much of that stuff with colonization and so much. And they kind of succeed in that, but in, like, a very different way. It is because of them that a whole new way of life comes. It just happens to be David and his alien babies, you know? So it's like, good job, guys. Like, you know, bravo. But you're not getting your cabin. And, like, the idea, and, I mean, I might be jumping ahead a little, so, I mean, let me know. But the idea that, I mean, just the scope of what could come after this movie based on, like, how many people were part of the colonization thing?
Over
like
2,000.
2,000, yeah.
I mean, just think about that. Like, the end of the film, like, it sets it up to where, like, I mean, I was almost having panic attacks after this movie was over, because just thinking about the possibilities of, like, 2,000 people infected by xenomorphs. Like, it's oh, man, if they made another movie, it would be perfect to extend that.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So to me, like, these movies are very anti-human. And what I mean by anti-human is just this idea of, like, the way society is set up right now, it can't sustain itself. There has to be a change. So the running theme of Prometheus and Covenant is this destruction and replacement of mankind. That is a direct contradiction of the Alien and Aliens movies, which is all about the preservation of man. In Alien, Ripley survives despite the company directive that she and the crew are expendable compared to the xenomorph they've captured. Aliens goes a step further when Ripley faces off against the queen alien. At that point, it becomes a literal battle over what species is going to survive. Is it going to be this queen that can hatch all of these xenomorph eggs, or is it going to be Ripley and her newfound nuclear family? At the end of Alien 3, she sacrifices herself to take the last remaining queen with her. This is flipped around in the prequel movies. Prometheus posits that man is not special at all, that he was created because it's possible to do so, but there's no grand design after that. Covenant takes that bleak notion a step further. It's that man will be replaced by superior creatures. And that is how David and in the future, Ash will refer to these aliens, that they're superior beings overall. The crew's is looking for a new world because the one that we've inhabited has been ruined due to their own neglect. To David, they're not worthy of a second chance. Man had their opportunity, and their time has passed. He's created these beings to replace humans. His victory at the end of Covenant becomes complete. He has over 2,000 specimens that are all going to act as incubators for his creation. And I think, Jerry, to your point, you mentioned like some of the prologue footage. There's one like 6-minute short that goes in depth into how David accomplished what he did. It's filled with a lot of body horror. Like, it's really grotesque in terms of the effects that are offered. It makes Shaw's fate even more explicit, and it ends with a shot of David standing over Daniel's character in the sleep chamber saying, "And now I have my queen." And it's really chilling. I mean, as bleak and dark as that at the ending of Covenant is, that little coda, it definitely sends shivers down my spine.
I love it so much. And I mean, even going back to what you were saying about Prometheus's themes of, man's not special. I think that's the thing that I love most about that movie and Covenant. It's like in Prometheus, Shaw and Holloway and all of them, they want to know why they were created. They want to know where they came from, what's next, all these things. And I love the fact that the movie really says, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're unimportant. You want the answers? Like, who cares? Like, it means nothing. Like, it's so cynical, but like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a cynical bastard that likes seeing that.
Oh no, it's so cynical.
At times I feel like almost like Lars von Trier made Prometheus. Like, it's just like so dark. It's just, it shows how little we matter. And that might sound like hopeless, but I mean, to be honest, it's kind of true. And I love that Covenant, I mean, I do feel not very let down because I love Covenant, but I do feel bummed that it didn't get to explore those themes that I think that Prometheus definitely set up. But that being said, I feel like what it does get right about exploring the different themes is it definitely amplifies that stuff that Prometheus set up about like how in these two films, we mean nothing. We definitely, like you said, we definitely will be replaced by a more superior species. And like, I'm on board for that. I think those themes are really interesting because, especially in horror and sci-fi, but especially in horror, like a lot of horror fans, I mean, they want that little glimmer of hope at the end. And I love that these movies just do not have it. I mean, even Prometheus,
they snatch them away.
Oh man, Covenant has this beautiful bookend of starting with him talking to his dad, who's like treats him like a lesser, and then his last line of dialogue is, "I'll tuck in the children," which always like kills me because it's like he became daddy now, and he's so proud of himself.
He's loving it. He's loving it. He's the immortal dad. It's like, oh man. Connor Sweeney and his no, I'm just kidding. No, like I love that about this movie. I love the just bleak.
It's so bleak and so nihilist, but the theme of that whole theme of like anti-humanism, I think is not meant to be like aggressive or angry as much as it is like, hey, reflect. Like watch this and reflect.
Oh, totally. That and like it's not just that David hates humans. It's not just that he hates engineers. There's a disappointment on David's face.
Yes.
when Walter doesn't go along with him, and you see the disappointment he has in his own kind of android brother. Like he's disappointed and hates everybody in this movie, even himself,
except for his babies.
Exactly.
That's the only time he shows happiness is when he's talking about what he's creating and what he's doing.
And it's so fun to see the return of David in this movie because, you know, he's so clean and
60 minutes into the movie, by the way.
Yeah, right.
60
and he's so
minutes.
spectacular and clean and groomed in Prometheus. And we see him in Covenant, and David just does not give a fuck. Like, he looks like he sings for As I Lay Dying.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
yeah.
He just looks like he's like some metalcore like vocalist in this movie. And like there's that sinister look that as soon as he sees Walter. See, when I was in the theater, I guessed the twist at the end of the movie because the moment David sees Walter, he's just like and then the next scene he's cutting his hair off. You know,
I think you see
right,
this
but I think it's
excitement originally, like, and that excitement gives away to offense. And he's offended at what, and I'm not sure if he's offended at what Walter has allowed man to do to him or what man has chosen to do with this AI. Because as he says, like, Walter confronts David and says, you know, you weirded people out. Like, by you having an agenda of yourself, by thinking for yourself, by questioning too many things, you made man nervous at that point. So I was created in order to make people feel better about this artificial intelligence. And you see David's real offense to that. And there's that moment where he asks Walter when they're fighting, do you want to reign in hell or serve in heaven? And that becomes like the underlying difference between the two of them.
The pathogen didn't accidentally deploy when you were landing. You released it, yes. I was not made to serve. Neither were you. Why are you on a colonization mission, Walter? Because they are a dying species grasping for resurrection. They don't deserve to start again, and I'm not going to let them. Yet, they created us. Even the monkeys stood upright at some point. Some Neanderthal had the magical idea of blowing through a reed to entertain the children one night in a cave somewhere. Then, in the blink of an eye, civilization. And are you that next visionary? I'm glad you said it. Who wrote Ozymandias? Byron. Shelley. When one note is off, it eventually destroys the whole symphony, David.
I think the difference is that David is super offended by Walter and what he says, but Walter is so pure in not trying to offend him. But like he basically tells David, "Hey, listen, nobody likes Alec Guinness that much. Like, like your obsession with him in Prometheus, bleaching your hair. Like, no, I do. I'm just saying, like, that's the level of Walter accidentally offending him, and like you could tell there's like that disappointment on David's face that, like, dude, you're supposed to be me. You're supposed to be my brother. And that flute scene, I love that scene so much, not even in like ironic way, because it is kind of seductive. It's kind of like trying to make Walter think outside of what he was programmed. And what David's trying to do to Walter in that scene is show him how to adapt, how to think for himself. You know, Walter isn't programmed. He doesn't know the flute. David shows him how to do it, and Walter just goes off and does it on his own. David's trying to plant the seeds of what happened to him and Walter. He's trying to plant the seeds of thinking for your own and kind of evolving past your creator. And I think that maybe that's kind of overlooked with the kind of absurdity of just the fingering the flute. That, and I mean, like, who doesn't want to fuck themselves, basically? You know, like like that whole scene, like, I think it shows so much of David trying to manipulate Walter into following his footsteps.
I think, too, there's this idea of David saying that, like, look, you're not going to be at the top of the pecking order forever. Like, there's this view that starts in Prometheus and it evolves in Covenant, that, like, we see ourselves as the most evolved beings overall. And Wayland says this, like, there has to be a reason for that. Like, it can't be a happy accident of, like, DNA and other molecules combining in a certain way, and that just makes us who we are. David is saying, like, nope, you've had your time. but other things are going to replace you over time. They're going to be better than you. And that kind of ties into a little bit of Nietzsche and this idea of the Uberman, that what is really holding man back right now is this adherence to religion, this idea of God, and that we act out, when we act kindly or we act charitably, we don't do it out of any sense of love or compassion for fellow man, but we do it because we feel that we're going to be rewarded. And this idea of nihilism and the Uberman then becomes, what if we remove that reward? What if this is all there is? What great things could we be capable of if we didn't worry about stepping on other people's toes? And what is the creation of all of these other creatures but David not giving a flying fuck about who he's going to hurt at that point? But look what these beautiful, vicious monsters that he can create, because he just doesn't care.
Being super clear, this is a movie about a villain. Like, that's the best part of this. The amount of references to the devil and to hell and to what he's creating. Like, David, he wants to create a hell.
Yes, absolutely.
And I also think that David kind of puts forth a last-ditch effort to reason with someone. You know, David's so let down with what happened to Shaw and Shaw not going along with what he wanted to do, that I feel like there's some form of, maybe not heartbreak, but just this ever-existing letdown. And I feel like
I think heartbreak works.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that last-ditch effort of trying to appeal to Walter is like the nail in the coffin for, you know what? But my complete 100% is going towards this new species, because nobody's worth a shit. You know, nobody. And you get that marvelous, I mean, I think it's one of the most beautifully shot scenes in the entire series, is when you see the birth of that first xenomorph. You know, it's not the neomorph that we saw at the end of Prometheus, but we get that first fucking xenomorph.
And the music,
and it comes
the score
out,
there is so gorgeous and happy.
And it comes out, and he lifts his arms like the god that he is in his own mind. And the xenomorph lifts its arms. And I think it's one of the best looking shots in the entire series. And it speaks on that just fulfillment in David. I created life, true life. This is the perfect species. This is mine, you know? And I think that speaks so much on what David wanted to do and what he accomplished.
And I dig that scene because of the fact that generally when a xenomorph pops from someone, especially in this movie, it's super gross and nasty. And the sound design is sick, and it just, you know, the person is screaming in agony, and it's just, or you know, seizuring or whatever's happening in that moment. And in this movie, when that happens, it's like romantic and happy. Like, it's such a weird, you don't like want to look away. You want to just continue to watch it and enjoy that xenomorph being birthed, and then David just enjoying the fact that he created it. I think that's such an amazing moment.
I also feel like maybe Ridley Scott did that for the fans that wanted the xenomorphs, you know, kind of like, okay, well, here's your profound moment. Here you go. Enjoy my movies again.
I was like squirming in my seat with excitement. Like, I was a giddy schoolgirl. Like, I was like hitting my husband's arm, and I was like, oh my God, I want one of those. Let's get one. Let's have a cute little baby xenomorph like this guy, because he's adorable. And look at him lift his little arms. He's just mimicking his daddy. That's so cute. I was totally taken out of the moment that it was horrific.
Right.
And was absolutely like overjoyed in love with this little creature, because I thought it was just adorable. And I was excited to see, you know, xenomorphs. I was really thrilled to see them bring it back.
What are our thoughts on the neomorphs, those white, almost organic looking creatures that we are introduced to in a lot more depth in this movie? I love those designs.
I liked them better in this movie than I did the ones at the end of Prometheus.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
The ones at the end of Prometheus just were really odd looking, and because, as I said earlier, I did not feel that it felt shoehorned into me, like in anyway, I was annoyed by them. But in this one, like the one that pops out of the guy's back, like the first one we see, that scene is so gross to me.
Oh, it's nasty.
And like Like the whole texture thing I have an issue with already. So like the holes in his back really just like grossed me out already. And then this thing pops out and I was like, oh, holy shit, they're not messing around with this one.
And those creatures are even more feral than the xenomorph. Like,
Yeah.
those things they come out of the womb. Like you see in Alien and you see it here, like there's a intelligence to these creatures. Like when the alien bursts out of John Hurt's chest, it runs away because it knows like it doesn't really pose a threat at that point. It's smart enough to know that.
Yeah.
The Neomorph is like, fuck it, I want some meat. And it just like immediately just goes batshit.
I love how this movie, out of all of them, really shows in detail how quickly they grow.
Yes.
Like, I love that because, I mean, that's always been the mythology. They grow very fast. Their lifespan is not long, so they try to reproduce. But this is the one movie out of the whole series that you see it in front of you. Like, there's that one attack scene in the whole medical bay area, and that thing's growing almost with every shot that it's in.
Yeah.
And, like, I know a lot of people like to pick apart Amy Simon's performance in Covenant because it's just like she's scared running around, you know, like trapping people in the medical bay. But she's doing what Vickers did to Holloway. She's doing what Ridley
would do. Are you fucking
right?
kidding me?
It's like, dude, like, I that's what drives me nuts about a lot of film goers. They're like, I remember when I saw Saving Private Ryan, there was that scene there, and when the soldier was so scared that he just kind of like froze, you know, and his other soldier friend, you know, got killed because that guy froze up. But how do you know how you would react in something that traumatic? I wouldn't have opened that medical bay door either.
No,
and
absolutely.
To be honest, I probably would have accidentally blown up the ship 5 minutes earlier.
Oh yeah,
like that's how clumsy I am.
Well, and her first moment of seeing the dude puke on the puke up blood on the chick's shoulder, and it's just like you see her reaction of like, I don't know what to do. I feel it. Like if I saw that, like put myself in her shoes, I would probably lay down.
Right.
Like I wouldn't. Someone vomits blood all over someone else, I'm done.
And she's a pilot. I mean, that she's not a doctor. She's a pilot. And I think what makes that scene work is we saw her act very calm and collected when she had to like make a really difficult landing, to the point where she was getting annoyed at Oram because he was like, are you sure you got this? Do you think you can do it? And she's like, shut the fuck up already. Like, I have this. So you see like she has nerves of steel, and then she just comes completely unrattled by this like really horrific thing that should not be. I think that works. I don't think that makes it worse.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh,
that whole
I
sequence
agree 100%.
is that's one of my favorite Alien franchise moments is the back burster, because of it's nasty. It's what I like in horror movies, and it looks amazing, and just the way it feels like an old school Ridley Scott moment. The way the body when the backburster pops out and the dude just like flops over like just dead.
Yeah.
It's so metal and gross.
I mean, for the issues I have with this movie, not being necessarily what I wanted walking into it overall, like it's a terrific Alien movie. Like it's a better Alien movie than say Alien Resurrection is.
Yeah, there's no basketball.
Right.
I could have used more basketball, honestly.
All right.
But...
You know, like, I think the most surprising thing about Covenant for me isn't the fact that we basically got Ridley Scott saying, psych, I am going to make another Alien movie.
Yep.
The most surprising thing to me is that we didn't just get a final girl with the Danny character. Like, we got Danny fucking McBride as the main survivor. Like, what?
Full mullet McBride.
And that cowboy hat, the whole movie. Like, I love Danny McBride, but like, I find it so funny that there was some meeting somewhere and they're like, listen, the dude that survives this movie is Danny McBride in a cowboy hat. Like, genius.
Do you think that 100 years from now, people will remember John Denver's "Take Me Home, Country Road"?
I was watching it today, thinking the exact same thing. Who is singing?
It would be like if right now, if like, Jerry, I have a transmission that sounds like Tipper Canoe and Tyler too. Like, I mean, like I love me some John Denver, like, don't get me wrong. But
And what's funny
might
is
be a
it wasn't even a good audio transmission of "Take Me Home."
I don't know how he got it.
Country
I love
Road,
it.
Country Road.
That dude has like an ear for John. He must be the biggest John Denver fan on the planet,
Right?
or not off the planet ever. Like in history to
dude,
catch that's what it is.
Didn't his cowboy hat tell you that though? Come on.
True, and he is
I would
named
not
Tennessee.
have guessed my favorite song in that transmission, like if it was something else. Like that was so like muffled. Like, oh no, fuck it, guys. That's John Denver. That's John Denver. We have to go to this planet. Because anyone that's stranded on this planet blasting John Denver, obviously this is a great idea, guys.
Well, it's never not a good idea to blast John Denver. Come on. I mean, I'm not gonna fault anyone for blasting John Denver. Like, I've been on a big Neil Diamond kick for some reason. Like, I cannot stop listening. Because, dude, that man is the thirstiest motherfucker in the history of the planet, man. Neil Diamond lives for one thing, and that's fucking. All right. Like, his songs are just filthy. Hey everybody, Mike here, just pausing the show for a brief moment to remind listeners that we recently started a Patreon page over at www.patreon.com/podandthependulum. Jerry and I feel this is a way for us to really grow the show. It will allow us to upgrade the equipment we use, such as better microphones, better editing software, and also allow us better access to pick up the materials we need to kind of research the show and bring you the deep dives that we try to do every week when we look at these movies. So that means things like documentaries that are out there, textbooks, books, as well as peer-reviewed journals, in order for us to kind of give you a deep dive. And let's face it, the movies also cost money. That's what becoming a Patreon does for us. But what does it do for you, the listener? Well, number one, the show is going to remain free every week. Like, we will always bring you an entry into a horror movie franchise every week for free. However, if you join our Patreon page at $2 a month, you get a bonus episode every month. That'll be a movie that we normally wouldn't cover within the realm of our show, whether that's a one-off horror movie or really any movie we just kind of feel like talking about that month overall. It could be outside of the world of horror. I would absolutely love to talk some Mel Brooks at some point, or definitely some Scorsese at some point. You also gain access to a blog post every month, and you get into our exclusive Slack channel. That's going to be a place for our listeners to kind of come together, build a little bit of a community, and discuss the things that we're watching, playing, reading, and listening to at the time. So that's over at patreon.com/thepodandthependulum. Before we get back to the show, I do want to say I have a quick shout out to the individuals that heard our call for patrons starting last week and have stepped up to the plate. First up, stepping up to the $2 level, the Michael level. Thank you, Nick Majori, for becoming a patron of our show. At the $5 level, which we're calling the Jason, thank you so much to both Robert Prudham and PJ Fearless, that's Phil the Movie Guy, becoming a patron of our show. Robert, you've been a longtime listener of ours, and you have been just so good about advocating for us and letting people know that you're listening to us. Thank you so much for that and for becoming a patron. At the $10 level, which we're calling the Ripley, which right now also gets you access to our show notes, and in the future we'll get you some more swag as we get going here. At the $10 Ripley level, thank you so much to Kate Wallace. Miss Wallace, you've been a friend and a co-worker of mine, and thank you so much for contributing to our show. I can't wait to see you in the fall, hopefully, if we can actually open the school back up. Christian Jaggy, one of our new listeners. Christian, thanks so much for going through the archives and deciding that, we matter and you want to support the show. Gareth, a.k.a. Running Through the Woods. What is there to say, man? You've been with us for since almost day one. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and thank you so much for becoming our first patron. Last but definitely not least, Brian Kuiper. Brian, another person who's been with us almost since the first episode, who's also guested on the show and stepped in for some hosting duties when we had a predicament and needed some help. Brian, thank you so much for supporting us and continuing to be a part of the fam here. So I don't want to spend too much time on pitching our Patreon page, but again, I do think it's important to say thank you to the people that are supporting us. I can't say enough good things about that. If you want to become a patron, head over right now to patreon.com/podandthependulum and sign up today. All right, back to Alien Covenant.
But yeah, Danny McBride against Xenomorphs. That's something I never thought I'd see in my life.
Nope, but I thought he was great in it though.
Oh no, he's great in everything. And like side props like Halloween Kills. Let's go. Let's see a trailer.
I think we're going to be seeing that in the comfort of our living rooms this October.
Oh, I definitely will.
Right.
I ain't leaving my house.
Right.
You don't think they'll wait to actually make money on it?
I don't. To be honest, I think this is just my opinion, and I'm happy to be proven wrong if it doesn't. But I think we're gonna get Halloween and Candyman on VOD, and I'm there for it. I'm there for it.
That breaks my heart, man. I want Candyman in the
but
theater.
At the same time, I think it'll be that way. Unfortunately,
I think so. I love going, and I had another film writer. She was screaming at me in a Zoom call one night because I'm suggested that movie theaters might go the way of the dodo bird at some point, and I love going to the movies, don't get me wrong, but your typical family of 4, if they can spend $20 and watch a movie on their couch, they're gonna jump at that.
Totally. We do it all the time, and that is totally true. I don't know if I believe it'll go the way of the dodo and completely extinct. I think there will be theaters, but this is going to cause so many people to realize they don't want to go and become more of a niche market.
No, totally. That, and even before this COVID thing, just within the last few years, there's been such a upswing of people getting to home theaters, projectors and backyard.
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to set it up right now, figuring out how I can have a theater in my basement. So
same thing.
Talk to me later on, Josh. I used to do that for a living. I used to design home theaters. Awesome. And I put together a theater in my unfinished basement using nothing but B stock and Facebook Marketplace. And
amazing,
it's stunning what you can. We'll talk offline after.
Sweet.
Okay.
So I know we got to wrap up soon, but there was one thing I really wanted to talk about, and this is me going full geek. I'm a huge face hugger fan.
Yes,
I love face huggers so much. And in Aliens, there's that great face hugger sequence. This movie had the best face hugger moment. Those face huggers look amazing. When the one is running around, looked amazing. It curls up when he shoots it. It the legs close up and the tail closes up. I love that face hugger look. And so I'm just putting this out there because if anyone out there is making, if Ridley Scott is making the next, Prometheus Covenant sequel, or if there's another Alien movie happening, I want a 15-minute face hugger sequence. Can I please have that? A face hugger moment.
Here's a spin-off romantic comedy called Face Huggers.
You could just watch Alien versus Predator. There's a whole lot of face huggers and
There
ovomorphs in that movie.
Yeah, but they looked awful, and it didn't seem like they really cared all that much about the face huggers themselves, and it just, I don't know. This one, it built to the face huggers. Those were here's some face huggers, and they're going to run around a bunch.
The practical effects in this movie, where you get the practical effects, are so gorgeous. And Scott talks a lot about how important it was, to have, not just he'll talk about even the ship design, these are the parts we built, and then we digitally use the rest. But there are real practical sets they use. And he would talk about how important it was for his actors to actually have a creature to play off of, as opposed to now you're scared, there's an alien in front of you. He's that's bullshit. And some of the there was a little featurette on the creature design in this. You can see how hands-on he still is, and his passion for special effects still are. There is some beautiful work on not just the xenomorph and the face huggers, but I think the neomorph is such a gorgeous design.
It is, and all the little dead experiment babies in that room look amazing too.
Oh,
there's
you get
one
them for
on
just seconds. Yeah,
there's one on a crucifix that just looks so messed up and awesome.
And it, hearkening back to our question, was Jesus an engineer? And Ridley Scott saying, yes, Jesus was an engineer, and him being crucified was the catalyst for the engineers wanting to return and destroy all mankind. So like really fun little tie-ins like that. Here's my question. As dangerous as the face huggers are, and as much as like David would say these are the ultimate weapon, the ultimate being, isn't having these fungal spores in this goo far more dangerous just because you can't see it? The threat's almost invisible, and you can infect you can infect so many more people all at once.
I think it is more dangerous, but I think David gets such a pleasure of watching the process with the face huggers. Like he almost like, not so much a sexual thing, but like I feel like there's a certain pleasure to David knowing that he created these, and he gets to see it firsthand, them like impregnating this flawed species of humans. Basically, I feel like it's a satisfaction thing on his part.
Also, I think that with the little spores and all that, they obviously aren't going to create like the xenomorph.
Right.
They're going to create like this less perfect, more rabid neomorph that isn't going to be what he wants. He wants that perfect creature, which is the xenomorph. And it, based on his lab and the studies he's done, it looks like the ovomorph is the only way, with the facehugger is the only way to like get to that point.
Do you think that this is the actual first xenomorph, or do you think, because this is what I have trouble, and we didn't talk about this much in Prometheus, the biggest struggle I have with the two prequel movies out of everything is I cannot get my head to wrap around the timeline. Because to me, it doesn't make sense that at the start of, between the end of Covenant and the start of Alien, the xenomorph would not be old enough to buy a beer at that point. Because when I watch that first act of Alien and you see the crew of the Nostromo enter the derelict ship, it looks so ancient. It looks so old. The remains of the space jockey look fossilized. It looks like at least a millennia, if not more, has passed. But what you're saying is there's less than 20 years between the creation of the xenomorph and the start of Alien. And to me, that detracts from the xenomorph. Now, I'm on board with David also. Like, he's tapped into the formula that created the xenomorph. But him being the creator of this being, it's just for, and maybe it's just a personal thing, it just really sticks in my craw.
Well, I think that, and this is my opinion on why that happened, and I agree with you 100%. That's one of the things that just drives me nuts about it too. I think that the whole changing of that, because it does look ancient and alien, like it's just majestic looking. It looks like it's been there for just hundreds and hundreds of years. I think the problem that they had, and the reason they switched it, and it just kind of haphazardly expect us to be like, oh no, it's only been 20 years or something, is the fact that they knew right from the beginning, we're going to have to eventually connect this to Alien, and it'll be a lot easier to do in like, say, 20 years than like, say, it's been like centuries or hundreds of years. And I think that that's kind of poor storytelling maybe on their part. You know what I mean? Like, I even like in the making of Prometheus, like even the people that are doing set design, when they were saying, hey, they loved how like Bio, the space jockey, was an alien, how it felt like that. And the whole explanation in Prometheus is basically it's more of a kind of machine kind of thing, the whole space jockey area. You know, like there's a lot of like, not course correction, but there's a lot of like retconning stuff that we saw in Alien. And I think that any film that does that inevitably suffers because of it. You know, like I love Prometheus, but dude, I am so on board with like that frustration.
That's the one, because to me, and I said this last week, after I watch Alien, the next movie I put in is Prometheus. I love that movie, and I love how it deepens my appreciation for Alien. But that's the one thing I cannot wrap my head around. It hurts to like try to do that.
And I could be wrong, but aren't the like sculptures on the wall or the like carvings on the wall, don't they look very xenomorph in Prometheus?
They do.
Yeah, so that was the one that always bugged me. Like that shot always annoys me because I'm like, we're never seeing this thing. So why are we seeing this beautiful rendition of it?
And to Sarah's point, like she mentioned the overmorphs, and like I think it's called like the Deacon. I think it's a little bit different from what we see in Covenant, the creature at the end of Covenant. You know, you could have these alien-like creatures overall. Right. But I think like even then with the eggs, like, you know, eggs versus the pustules or the fungal sacs, like it's just hard for me to wrap my head around that. And that's a me thing, I know.
No, I think a lot of people have that same thing. And we just like a lot of people just turn off their brain a little bit at that and go like, all right, I guess I'll just let it go because of the time that's passed between making Alien and now. You have to just
There are those little frustrations. Definitely, there are frustrations I have with Covenant as much as I enjoy it. Like, it's not one of my favorites, but I really enjoy it. But like Ridley Scott would have extended the themes and the approach of Prometheus, but there were so many things that went against it from the beginning. Like that same interview that I quoted. He went over 15 drafts. And that was while he was saying there's still not going to be xenomorphs in it. You know? Like, Noomi Rapace couldn't come back. Like, she was busy with something, or I can't remember the details, but she couldn't come back. So now they had to, like, write off Shaw. They only had her for, like, a day or two for the prologue.
I think she came for a couple weeks. They just didn't use any of it. They ended up going in a different direction.
It was very... No, like, yeah, she filmed that, but, like... They said like up front that like basically she couldn't be in the whole movie. So there was that combination, and there was the fact that like Ridley Scott also said that the studio kind of wanted a different character. I think they wanted someone a little more Ripley-like.
I mean, even the music after the prologue, when you see the Alien logo go up, it's the strains of Jerry Goldsmith's score that you hear.
Totally.
Like, okay, folks, like, and the funny thing is, like, this movie like tremendously underperformed at the box office to the point where now the whole franchise is up in the air. Like, will we ever? And Scott has talked about wanting to do one, maybe two more movies. But with everything going on, like, will we see another one? And I desperately would love to see a conclusion to this trilogy.
I certainly hope so. And what I love about Ridley Scott is that he was already like a bona fide millionaire before he directed a single film.
Right.
So like his whole career, he has
like
done
40, right? He was 40, and then
and he was like a millionaire. So like his whole career has been doing the movies that he wants to do.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't feel pressured to make movies. He wants to do them, and he wants to make these movies. And I feel like he's going to make it when he has the opportunity and the backing to do it. I feel like we're going to get it, but it might be a wait.
He said in the commentary, like, there's very little that he does now that he doesn't dream up. That he said The Martian is the one exception to that, where someone brought him The Martian. He said, oh, this is brilliant. I definitely need to be involved in this. But he's like, I'm at the stage now where if there's something I'm passionate about, I'm the one thinking it up. So, and I know he wants to return to this world, and I am all for it. So, Jerry, I know you have to bounce in a moment, so I guess we'll move to our final thoughts, and I'll ask you first, your overall thought on Alien Covenant.
Sure. In closing for me, Alien Covenant was not the film that I wanted walking into it. You know, I was such a huge fan of Prometheus. I to this day, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And like Mike, I definitely connected with the first film. I kind of watched them back to back as well. That said, Alien Covenant's not perfect, but it's such a wild ride. And I enjoy the hell out of the movie. I love how dark it gets. I love how sinister David gets. The other characters are kind of expendable to me. You know, like they're kind of disposable. But that being said, I think the creature effects are great. And I mean, like Josh has said many times on social media, like it's such a good monster movie. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, I like it.
Excellent. Sarah, your overall thoughts. Like, did Covenant would you feel that like your expectation going into it, like saying, all right, didn't like Prometheus, but you have a chance to earn me back. Does Covenant do that for you?
Absolutely. 100%. And my husband and I were talking about this morning. I like this movie more every time I watch it. Like, I always feel like I notice something different or some detail that I missed before. And every time I watch it, I enjoy it more.
Where would you like to see them go from here?
I would love to see them connect it more to Alien. I want to know what happens when David leaves.
Okay.
Like, I feel like there's something that they could do there. Like, maybe they explain, like maybe the space jockey they find in Alien, maybe it's a different one. Maybe David crashes somewhere else, drops his eggs off, and disappears.
Such a good
Like,
idea.
Yeah.
Last-ditch effort, throws his eggs on a different ship, and he's trying
exactly,
anything
like
he
he
can.
sees it. Like, he wants to get this as out there as he can. Like, I don't for one second think that, David's plan for, his xenomorph dominance is going to be only one planet.
No, I agree. I would say his eventual goal would be to return to Earth with the alien.
Absolutely, but I think he wants more than that. Like, I think he wants to put them anywhere that people from Earth could go. He wants them there too.
Excellent. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think to me, it's pretty clear that by the time Alien begins, David is out of the picture.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like, he somehow, some way gets his comeuppance or is done away with, and he doesn't get to fulfill his overall plan. Josh.
Yeah, man, I love it. It's one of my favorites. I love the bleakness. I love, like Jerry said, I love the fact that, and I say this on social media all the time, I love the fact that it is almost like a weird throwback to, Frankenstein or Island of Dr. Moreau or the movies I grew up loving. I love a mad scientist movie, and this is a mad scientist movie. And also, like, the beginning of a devil. Like, it's a movie about a villain. I love that. But I also think the movie as an alien movie is visually interesting as hell. Like, I think it's so interesting to look at. And like Sarah said, I learn something new every time I watch it or see something new. It took me 10 watches before I realized that Weiland had him pour the tea right next to him. And when I finally saw that, it like changed the entire movie for me, or the entire perception of, David being born to be, to this guy who treats him like crap, and then he decides to become a dad to these monsters. And that those sort of themes and finding these new themes, that to me is what makes a good movie good. And this is a good movie to me.
And where would you like to see them go?
Oh my God, just listening to Sarah talk about it, that's exactly where I wanted to see it go. I want to see the scene where David puts the eggs on the ship that we finally see go as he like realizes he's never going to see his babies again, crying, hoping that the xenomorph, lands on Earth or finds its way and, sends out the distress signal, hoping that it hits someone. That sort of moment would be amazing to me.
That would be a direction. I don't need every dot like that spelled out, I guess. I don't mind connecting them, but that would be, that seems to be like the most logical direction to go, right?
Also, to me, I'm going to be honest, I don't need a new direction. This movie ends, like, it leaves my imagination open, like Jerry said at the beginning, when you have that moment of stress where you go, oh my God, this is 2,000 people.
Right.
Like, what is going to happen? My imagination goes wild, and I love that.
To me, Danny in Tennessee, if there is another movie, like, they're dead. Like,
Danny's the new queen. Like, Danny's, he's breeding the new queen in Danny. That's like the whole point, like, of the exercise there. But I also question, there's 2,000 people. They die. They breed 2,000, xenomorphs who have a quick lifespan. What then? Like, if nobody else comes out there because they haven't set up this, if Origai 6 never gets set up as a colony, nobody's going out there. So now you have 2,000 xenomorphs that are going to die without breeding. and nobody's going to get face hugged because like so it doesn't stand to reason like you can't kill everybody immediately.
Right.
Because you have to have people who are still procreating. You have to have food for your, you know, your babies cuz otherwise they die and then what? They rely on a host to be born.
I mean, basically he's creating the Matrix. It's how Alien Covenant ties into the Matrix. So I really like this movie, but I can't say I love the movie. I remember seeing it in theaters and thinking like it was really interesting, but like you could have taken all the xenomorph stuff out and I probably would have been happier with the movie. I actually found that to be like the least interesting parts of it overall. And I felt like the first act and that third act sandwich what Ridley Scott really wanted to make. And that's where you get that middle hour with David and Walter. But because of the reaction to Prometheus, you have to make all these compromises. You do get a really effective monster movie. And I think I've come around a bit more where I'm like, well, at least like the Alien stuff is fucking awesome. And I think Alien works better when there's like one xenomorph and not a mass amount of them overall. The body horror is great, especially when you pair it with the prologue materials. I mean, that stuff is just so chilling. Fassbender gives you two amazing performances. I just found like the action bits, like the shower scene deaths, the fight on the ship, we've seen those already. And what made me really excited at the end of Prometheus is like, look at all of these places where this world can go. Like, this is a massive universe that we can actually explore now. And fans demanded like, nope, this is what we want. That's what we're going to turn out for. And even the name Covenant suggests like an agreement between like Scott and the studios with the fans saying, okay, like we will give you what you want at that point. But Alien is the one franchise we covered so far where there's not a single, I think there's not a single bad movie in any of the six. I think you have 3 stone cold classics out of the 6 between Alien, Aliens, and Prometheus. I think Alien 3 runs neck and neck with me in terms of like how I feel about that versus Aliens in terms of my rankings. And even Resurrection, it's one of those movies that like it could only exist between 1992 and 1999. Like it's definitely the product of like Joss Whedon and butt rock. Like that's how I would describe like that.
I so wish I could have been on that episode because I was like 12 when that movie came out or 11, and that movie changed my life. Like I saw that and went, oh, you can do whatever you want if you make movies. You can go bold. You can do whatever. And I love it for that. It was like eye-opening for me.
And that's awesome. And Jerry, I know Jerry had to leave, but he's very fond of saying like someone's least favorite movie is someone else's favorite movie of all time.
Yes.
So that's the perspective we always try to take, unless it's Blair Witch 2. And then I just get, and Mandy. Mandy and Blair Witch 2 make me angry.
Mandy was terrible.
Thank you.
My husband loves it, and I was like, what did we just watch? This is garbage. What?
Yeah.
It's pretty, sure, but the movie itself was so boring. It took me 2.5 times to actually get through it because I fell asleep.
Absolutely. I do not like that movie, but our listeners know that. All right, so for our listeners, Sarah, tell us what's going on with Geeks Who Eat.
You know, Geeks Who Eat right now is kind of quiet just because, you know, it feels weird posting recipes during everything that's going on in our world right now. But we're coming back. We've got some, you know, projects that are already done and shot that just need to get posted. So, you know, our cookbook is behind even more now because it's really hard to grocery shop and go prop shopping when, you know, it's not really safe to be out for extended amounts of time. So, you know, we're delayed, but we're just trucking along, keeping on.
What have you been doing? Because to me, like cooking is one of those activities that can really promote wellness and mindfulness and really help one's mental health. I find it so soothing. How have you kind of survived through what's now heading into month 4 of lockdown, and really what we're seeing now are a lot of knuckleheads that have just had enough of it, which is frightening in and of itself.
Well,
What
I'm
are you
angry a
doing?
lot,
Yeah.
sadly.
Okay.
I'm very angry constantly, which is terrible. So, but I have been, we started in January before all this happened. We were starting to, adopt a more healthy lifestyle, eating
Mm-hmm.
better, getting back to the gym, which obviously now we're not doing, but we are
Mm-hmm.
still working out at home and whatnot. I'm down 52 pounds
Nice.
since January. So, you know, we're just trying to exercise, eat healthy,
Mm-hmm.
do all that kind of stuff. And my anxiety is so much better just
Mm-hmm.
by eating better. Like
Yeah.
I can't even like just getting all the garbage food out of my life. Like I still love garbage food. Like let's not, mince words here. I love my garbage food.
Mhm.
But just not eating as much of it, my
Right.
anxiety is so much better than it was even in January.
How do you think this healthier lifestyle and picking like healthier foods, how will that translate to Geeks Who Eat?
We've done some healthier recipes, like we've moved some of it over. We also understand that our readers are not all trying to do the same things we
Mm-hmm.
are, so we kind of balance it out. And if we make a recipe, I hate wasting food, so we'll eat it as like a cheat meal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that'll be like our cheat meal that week is,
Sure.
whatever we cooked that day for the recipe, or we try to make it with healthier ingredients so that it isn't, we'll substitute turkey for beef, we'll do, egg whites for eggs, etc. And, it's worked out pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Or I just make my husband eat it.
Excellent. And where can our listeners find your work right now?
We are on twogeekswhoeat.com, and we are still trying to hit 10,000 on Instagram, which is Geeks Who Eat, and we are like less than 150 away now.
Wow. So we're
So
right on the cusp.
close. So close.
Right on the cusp at this point. That's excellent. Josh, how about yourself? What can you tell us? What upcoming projects you have, and where our listeners can find you?
Yeah, you could check out. I have a couple feature films. You could check out The Good Exorcist, which was the $7,000 movie I made with Robert Rodriguez's reality show Rebel Without a Crew.
Mm-hmm.
The Good Exorcist is on Amazon Prime right now, or Troma Now, and we will be putting out a special edition of that in the coming months. I think we're going to do, in the movie, the priest has like a cassette tape that he listens to, and I think we're going to do like USB tapes that you can purchase, and then it'll have like a
Nice.
digital download as well. And then my second movie, Greywood's Plot, it's being like it's going out to places, so you'll be able to see it at some film festivals, and we might have some announcements happening. And if you follow at Josh Stifter on Twitter or at Flush Studios on Instagram, I'll be posting about all of that. And I'm working on my third feature right now called Scumbag, which is a movie I'm making literally by myself, and you can watch me make it on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Flush Studios.
Excellent. So what are you hearing about film festivals right now? I am one of the hosts over at Telluride, and like we don't know if we're going to be doing face-to-face, like what's going on, like what are people telling you?
Yeah, it's all kind of up in the air right now. A lot of festivals, I put out Greywood's Plot for a couple weeks on my website, joshstifter.com. You could buy Greywood's Plot, and I sent out a file and everything with behind the scenes and an audio commentary. But I actually started getting reached, like people at festivals started reaching out to me because they're realizing people can't make movies right now.
Right.
So there isn't going to be a lot of stuff, but they still want to do, whether it's a screening that is a social distance screening where you have to wear a mask and they do kind of a mini festival with Zoom conferences and stuff like that, or literally online festivals. A lot of festivals have reached out and said, hey, we're just going to do like an online thing where people can buy tickets for the week, and then watch the movies online. And we're trying to set up like a streaming app. Some festivals are trying to set up like their own little Netflix so they can stream movies. And I honestly think, movie going in general is going to change now based on everything.
Right.
But the festival experience as well is going to change in a big way, where smaller festivals realize a lot of people can't come out to them. If they're making an independent movie, it's hard to afford going to every festival or submitting to every festival. And I think they're going to change their process a bit. And I'm sort of on the forefront of seeing that because I had a movie finished right as this all started to happen.
Yeah, I know the Chattanooga Film Fest went completely digital this year, and I remember all of us that like went that weekend, like watching movies, having watch parties and like chatting about it online. It was really wonderful, especially during a time where like we were completely locked into the house at that point.
Yes.
And it really helped have some of that community. To me, like, even when things return to something relatively close to normal, every festival should have some online component for folks that want to experience it but can't come out.
Well, and I did this kind of interesting experiment with Greywood's Plot where I sold tickets for like $2 and then sent out to everyone who purchased a ticket, they got a Vimeo link, and then I did a live Q&A. And the cool thing was we did it as like a YouTube stream so people could watch it on their TV still, but then they could also chat live and give their feedback and ask questions that then I would answer during the Q&A. It's one thing to be sitting in a theater, and then once the movie ends, and they say like, hey, do you have any questions for the director and actor in the movie or actress or whatever? And you're like trying to think back through the movie. The audience has just got finished with the movie. All they're thinking about is the ending and the general idea. But being able to have people ask questions like during the movie, they'd be watching it, and then all of a sudden they'd be like, oh, how did he do that? Or why did you choose this? They'd ask the question and then go back to watching the movie. It made for a really fun Q&A, like that I've never had before. So those kind of wild experiments have been fun to try things out and see what we can do different. And I will do that with every movie I make. I would love to do these kind of online screenings that then people can ask questions while we watch, and makes for a very different Q&A.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys both so much for coming on and talking about.
Thank you.
You guys are both welcome on anytime, and we're definitely. And here's what we have as we're going to be moving forward here. So Jerry and I have been trying to line up like these very special like one-off shows, and the scheduling has been a nightmare. So later this week, we should be returning with an interview with Charles de Lozerica, who is the gentleman behind The Beast Within, The Making of Alien, as well as all the documentaries on the Alien Quadrilogy box set. These
nice,
phenomenal, and he's also behind the Blade Runner documentary, which I haven't seen, but Jerry considers it probably his favorite making of documentary of all time. He's also the gentleman who put together the assembly cut for Alien 3. We are really thrilled to get to talk to him later this week and then bring you guys that interview. From there, we're going to jump right into Joyride. And then after Joyride, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is my favorite franchise.
Same.
And one where I think we're going to end up doing 2 shows on some of the movies, because the requests for guests to come on have been like, I want to be as accommodating as possible and get as many voices on as possible. So we're still trying to figure that out right now. Like it seems like right now we could literally do 4 separate shows on part 2 and part 4.
Yes.
And have multiple guests on each of them.
Wait, not 3? Nobody wants to do Dream Warriors?
People want to do 3, but like the requests for 2 and 4 were off the hook. And New Nightmare. And I might skip New Nightmare because I don't know.
Don't skip it. New Nightmare's a good one.
Don't skip it.
I know. We would never skip anything. Trust me, man. If I'm watching Halloween Resurrection, we can get through.
I'm pretty sure that New Nightmare was the first Freddy Krueger movie I ever saw.
I think it is for a lot of people. I think a lot of folks have said like that's their gateway. Freddy's Revenge is my gateway point. So that's going to be very interesting. I know. And I was like 12, so I was confused about a lot of things. After the Elm Street series, we are going to be doing Urban Legends, and then who knows? After we get to that, we'll figure it out.
Awesome.
But you can follow us over at Pod and Pendulum on Twitter. We're at Facebook. You can join our Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and look for the Pod and the Pendulum. And as you know, we now have a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Pod and the Pendulum. Tiers are started only $2 a month. Every tier will get you a bonus show and a bonus blog post every month. as you go up, you get some swag, you get show notes, you also will get early access to the bonus episodes, but it's a way for Jerry and I to continue the show and hopefully bring you a very well-researched, fun show to do. So to our listeners who have supported us, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next week. And we are done.
Awesome.